Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Power of Informational Interviewing workshop. My name is Jennifer Rhodes. I'm one of the career advisors here on the CPD team. I'm joining you from very warm Tempe, Arizona today. Just to let you know, a couple housekeeping items. Everyone has been placed automatically on mute. If you do have questions along the way or feedback, please feel free to type in the chat as I'll be monitoring that throughout the presentation today. And everyone that has registered for this session will be receiving a copy of the recording. So you'll be able to go back and review the material. There are quite a few tips that we cover today, so just know that you can always go back and review that. The recording will be usually sent in about 2 business days from the day that we record it. So you will have that copy out there. And before we get started, I'd like to get to know a little bit about who's joining us today. So if you wouldn't mind typing in what college you're from, whether it's IT, business, education, healthcare, and what interests you about this topic. Right, so we have healthcare, business, IT, excellent. Looks like across the board here. Business, approaching a career change, job interview next week, IT cyber program, awesome. College of Business is successful. Okay, so just one thing to clarify here, this particular workshop is on informational interviewing, which is a bit different than preparing for traditional job interviews. So informational interviewing has to do with making connections and growing your network, and also learning about different professions, different positions through that act of informational interviewing. So just know that we won't focus a lot specifically on interview prep, but some of what we talk about will also help to prepare you when you do have those kinds of conversations, when you're introducing yourself to folks professionally. So I just want to clarify that. We do have recordings also on our website of pre-recorded webinars. One of them is called Interviewing 101. So if you do need more content related to interviewing specifically, for different job positions, you can access that recording as well. So just keep that in mind. And this, yeah, again, is really focused on how do you grow your network through the act of informational interviewing. All right, great. Yes, you're welcome for the clarification. We have healthcare, cybersecurity, information assurance, trying to jump to the next level. Excellent. The reason why this kind of presentation is so relevant to that next step in your career, though, is because does anybody know statistically approximately how many positions are never posted anywhere? When we're talking percentage wise, if you want to type in the chat, how many positions are never posted? Eric, really good guess, 90%. Anthony says about half, about 50, 60. These are all really good guesses. Roger got it. Roger got it. It's approximately 80%. So when we look at that figure, that's a majority of the positions that exist. So this really drives home the importance of having a strong professional network. And today we're going to talk about, again, how to utilize informational interviewing to build a strong network. Another fun statistic for you is that approximately 1 in 12 informational interviews results in a job opportunity. So again, this can be very much directly relevant to your search, in addition to how to effectively network. Because what we find sometimes is folks are very direct when they're reaching out to people, and that's not always negative, but if you haven't established rapport with someone ahead of time, and let's say you know, ask someone if they have any positions with their company, or you say if anyone, you know, would look at your resume, if you haven't already established some rapport with them, those requests could fall by the wayside. So again, what we're going to talk about today is a really effective approach to building that network through this process of informational interviewing. And excellent, I see some folks are already starting to network in here. Eric is posting his connection to LinkedIn. This can be a great way, attending webinars, workshops like this can also be a great way to build your network. So definitely, that's an excellent tactic there. So as we get into the content here, again, if you're just joining us, we are recording this session. You will be sent out a copy of this recording, usually within 2 business days. So everybody who has registered today will be able to go back and hear this content and be able to review it. So as I said a couple minutes ago, I'm Jennifer Rhodes. I am one of the career advisors here in the CPD team. I've been with WGU for about 3.5 years, coming to you from Tempe, Arizona. Before my role here at WGU, I worked for Arizona State University approximately 10 years in different career development capacities. So everything from working with first-time freshmen to PhD postdocs to career changers to folks who had experienced a reduction in force and had to really make a career pivot. So I feel fortunate to be well-versed in working with a lot of different individuals when it comes to their career development process. I personally really love the storytelling aspect of career development and helping you each to tell your stories, understand what your strengths are, and how to really connect those to areas of interest that you may have. The other thing I love about working with WGU students is you folks are from all over the country. A lot of you have, very rich life experience. So it's really interesting for me to hear about your journey and to be able to connect with you. I'm also a nationally certified counselor. So part of my role here at WGU that I'm really excited about is infusing SEL strategies, social emotional learning, into career development. We are going to cover a slide on anxiety and networking, just along those SEL lines there. So if any of you are a bit nervous about networking, we do have a couple of strategies specifically for working with anxiety and networking. So again, thank you for joining us, taking that time out of your day to connect with us. Appreciate that. And this is the overview of the presentation. So we're going to start off talking about what is informational interviewing and why is it important. As I specified a bit earlier, if you're just joining us, this is different than preparing for a traditional job interview. This is more of a strategy to utilize to effectively build your network and to create what we call mutually beneficial business partnerships. We're going to talk a little bit about general tips for success when you're looking at building your network. We'll talk a little bit about considerations when you are coming up with an outreach strategy. And it's really important to be mindful and cognizant of the way that you're approaching this kind of activity. We'll talk specifically about the LinkedIn alumni tool, which if you haven't utilized this is an extremely valuable feature within LinkedIn that lets you look at data for other WGU students and grads. So it's going to let you see what everybody majored in, where they live, where they work, what they do, what their top skills are. This is a great platform for you to start to identify people that you would like to conduct informational interviews with. We'll talk a little bit about preparation, because just like a traditional job interview, you do want to be prepared before you conduct an informational interview. Doing some research on your professional of interest, their company that they work for, their career history as much as you can. Having questions ready and prepared ahead of time is very important. Talking about how the informational interview experience typically plays out, a little bit about follow-up. And like I said earlier, I do want to specifically address tips to increase confidence and reduce anxiety. I would say a great number of students that I talk to are very honest and say, you know what, networking is really not my strength. It's not my thing. I actually get a lot of anxiety about it. And so I do want to talk about some specific strategies that I think could be helpful if that speaks to you. And then also some next steps and Q&A as time permits. So before we get into this next slide, another question I'd like to ask to the group is, what do you think of when you hear the word networking? Please type into the chat any thoughts, positive, negative, indifferent. What words come to mind when you think of networking? Okay, I see forced, I see connecting, I see chore, relationships, excellent. Sharing, connection, personal connections, excellent. Personal connections, yes. Opportunity, excellent. The reason I pose this question is, again, there a lot of times there are a lot of opinions and feelings around networking. And I think that a lot of folks forget that this is about building mutually beneficial business relationships. So when some people say, oh gosh, I feel like I'm schmoozing to get somewhere, or I feel like, I'm asking for something from someone and, maybe it doesn't feel comfortable. I encourage you to frame it within the context of really what you are doing is building mutually beneficial business relationships. So even within this context of informational interviewing, where you're reaching out to a particular person for information, for a little bit more of their perspective, you never know how you may be able to aid that person in return. And it might not be right away, but it may be down the road that they are needing your assistance. So going into this, I just recommend that you consider, just reminding yourself that a lot of this is about building those mutually beneficial partnerships. So you'll see the quote on here. If you want to go somewhere, it is best to find someone who has already been there. So I would say that I recommend using this LinkedIn alumni tool and informational interviewing multiple times a day with students in our appointments, because of course a lot of you want to know, what's the career outlook like for healthcare administration, or how many, what certifications are most important when working in IT. While we as career services professionals are all cross-trained and we're well versed in the different areas that we offer, we honestly don't have those backgrounds directly. So if you are able to make a connection with someone who is already in the field and ask their perspective, okay, what certifications were most helpful for you to land that next IT position? Or for healthcare administration, what about your degree at WGU did you find most helpful? Honestly, obtaining this narrative firsthand is invaluable. You could watch YouTube videos, you could read articles online, but until you really hear from someone who's been in that particular situation, a lot of times it's hard for you to get a full picture. Another question I'd like to ask to all of my attendees here today: has anyone ever done a formalized informational interview before? If you could type in yes or no there. Okay, I see a few no's. Yep. This is actually one area where I'm glad I'm seeing a lot of no's, because hopefully then this information, the tips on this session will be very helpful for you. Because for a lot of people, they don't even think of this as honestly a networking tool, but it can be extremely valuable in terms of getting an in with a company or understanding, again, a career trajectory for someone in the past. Also, just a quick side note, the position that I have at WGU is greatly due to an informational interview I did. I had the understanding that a lot of remote positions, especially in my field of student services, could be very competitive. I must have applied for 3 or 4 different positions with WGU. I felt like I met all the criteria, never got a call. I was always getting that email saying, sorry, we're moving forward with other candidates. Well, knowing the value, as I do, of networking, I went on LinkedIn. I found someone that is a program mentor here in my city of Phoenix, reached out to this person, introduced myself, said that, I was very interested in learning more about WGU, asked her if I could have about 20 to 30 minutes of her time. She was so extremely helpful. She set up a time to chat with me. We talked all about WGU, how competency-based education works, what it's like to work in a remote capacity, because I had never done that fully before. And one important thing to note, we're going to talk about this a little bit later as we will reinforce this idea, but you do want to avoid asking about a job or any kind of internship when you're doing an informational interview. If they bring it up to you, the person that you're talking to brings it up, then that opens the door for that conversation. But the reason why you want to be cautious of this is when you're approaching that individual and saying, I would love to hear your perspective. I would love to hear what it was like for you to enter the field. You're coming at this from an advice seeking standpoint. If you're asking for a job, you start asking about job positions, they're really going to question your motives, and it can come across very differently. But I didn't ask anything about jobs in my particular informational interview. But this person actually did bring it up. And just so you know what can happen, I was so elated that this happened. But this particular person told me, if you decide to apply for a position with WGU, feel free to put my name in your cover letter as somebody you talk to. What that did is that showed WGU that I had a connection, and it finally opened some doors for me. So I personally believe in informational interviewing. I've heard many success stories, but I always like to share that as well with the students I chat with, just, to show how directly relevant it really was for me. So we talked a little bit about these perceptions about networking and how they really are, meant to be mutually beneficial. Um, Networking also leads to more than 70% of job offers. It's another statistic for you. Networking involves talking to people, developing those relationships. There's also that element of marketing yourself, though, and that's what we want to talk about in this session as well. And this is the part that can cross over into when you're preparing for traditional job interviews. And also, I would like you to take a moment and think about ways you can build your network from where you are right now. Who can be part of your network, in other words? And honestly, when we start with that, essentially anybody can be part of your network. Folks that are attending this workshop today could be part of your network, possibly. We staff members and career services could be part of your network. Your course instructors, possibly, depending on how well you connect with them, how many courses you take. Also, friends, family, significant others' friends, people in your faith-based groups, employer panels, if you have a handshake account and you're able to attend our informational sessions, which is where you RSVP and you hear about a company, and then you have the opportunity a lot of times to talk with the employers afterwards. That can be a way to build your network. Professional organizations. Side note about that, if you're not aware of your most popular professional organizations related to your discipline, you can go on our career services site and it'll divide it up by the four schools or colleges. So you'll see College of IT, College of Healthcare, Education, Business. There is a section there about professional organizations specifically related to your discipline. And if you join as a student, a lot of times you have a greatly discounted membership rate. So it could be a matter of $50 a year, as opposed to when you graduate, $250 per year. So it's really great to investigate these because they do present some unique networking opportunities as well. And you may even find people to conduct informational interviews with in those professional associations. So just start thinking about, again, who could be part of your network as you're planning on thinking about these informational interviews. So why informational interviewing? Why is this important? The points here cover some of the top reasons to consider. With the right preparation, an informational interview can be a great opportunity to introduce yourself to industry leaders, also to determine the right career path for you, and gain a better understanding of how to advance your chosen career. According to a Harvard Business Review article, informational interviews are essential to helping you find out more about the type of industry, company, or role you're interested in. You may think you already know all about a certain position, but speaking to someone directly gives you that opportunity to test your assumptions. Also, another Harvard Business Review article talks about informational interviews give you the exposure, the way to get yourself known in the hidden job market. The visibility may put you straight on a short list, even if a job isn't even advertised. This happens more frequently than you may know. They can also be a great boost to your self-esteem, right? A lot of times when you do these informational interviews, people ask about you as well. This gives you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about your achievements up to this point, your enrollment in the degree at WGU, or if you're an alum, the achievement of your degree here. So you get to learn more about a job or organization. Sometimes you even get insider knowledge. You can ask a question like, how would you describe your company's culture? What do you see are the greatest strengths and challenges of your current role? What are 2 or 3 initiatives, if you're able to share those? Some companies have very strict policies about this, but you might say, what are 2 or 3 initiatives that you're working on this year? So that can give you an idea of some of the bigger goals, but also the day-to-day work of that professional. Test driving, as we said, connecting with decision makers and expanding your network at the same time, building confidence in yourself, your job search process, and interviewing skills. Because of that, again, some of this does cross over to preparing for a professional job interview. Conducting informational interviews show a lot of times that you are being very strategic. They can show initiative, motivation, professionalism, and can set you apart from other candidates that may be exploring a certain company. You can learn about career paths you didn't know existed. 2 degrees that come to mind that I work with a lot with our students are the MBA, our general MBA program, and our healthcare administration type programs. These are extremely versatile. And a lot of times I'll get questions about, I'm not sure what career titles I should be looking for, or job titles, if you will. Honestly, one of the best ways to determine that is to talk to some folks that are in the field. Utilizing that LinkedIn alumni tool again can be excellent to get some of that feedback. And as I'm stressing throughout this whole presentation, is you are building these mutually beneficial business relationships. Even if you're making a career pivot and you don't have much experience or no experience in that new area, again, you may very well still have something to offer that other professional. Maybe they want to go to WGU to advance their career, and maybe they're not a WGU grad, and you connect with them. Maybe they want to learn more about competency-based education. Or maybe you come from a different field. Maybe you started in IT and now you're doing business and someone else wants to explore the IT field. There are many ways that you can be of service to someone else, even if it's not evident in the very beginning. So some basic tips for success in terms of preparing for an informational interview. Prepare, research, and practice is key. When we talk about preparation, this could be everything from, utilizing sites to do some research. So utilizing LinkedIn to do company research. Glassdoor is another great site to use when you're conducting some company research and background. Looking at that professional's profile on LinkedIn. Where did they go to school? How long have they been in their current position? What professional associations did they join? What certifications did they have? Practice. So what this has to do with, I would say, really key to this kind of experience is practicing what we call your introductory 30-second commercial. We call it 30-second commercial, but it does not have to be 30 seconds. Usually kind of a good guideline would be about maybe 2 to 3 minutes, but being able to talk very precisely about what you have done so far in your academic and career life, what your top skills are, how you became interested in a field, and what you're looking to do next. These are key elements to have into that introductory um, section, if you will, because they will very well ask you, you might just say, oh, tell me, what led you to schedule this informational interview? Tell me a little bit more about yourself. So having that prepared is important and ready to go. Keeping that introduction short. When we talk about setting the tone, so this has to do with, making sure that you keep the focus on the other person. And also, if you want to know more about a certain area, sometimes when folks are conducting these informational interviews, they're not sure all of what's of interest to you. So they might spend a really long time talking about their college degree, for example, where you might want to know a little bit more about their leadership experience. It is appropriate to redirect, gently redirect the conversation and help them to understand what you'd like to know a little bit more about. This next tip, avoid scheduling an informational interview after applying for a position. This is very important because let's say you reach out to someone that is on the committee for an active search and you set up an informational interview or you attempt to do that. That can put that other professional in a very awkward position because they could be showing favoritism to you while that search is open. So the best time, honestly, to conduct an informational interview is when you have a company on your radar before you apply for something, or after a position has closed, so that you can avoid some of that possible favoritism and putting that professional in kind of an awkward space. So just keep that in mind in terms of time frame when to schedule these. And showing appreciation. So anytime, we'll talk a little bit about follow-up here in the process too, but making sure that afterwards you always send a thank you, whether it's a handwritten card, a thank you email, what have you. It's really important to express appreciation for that person's time, because a lot of times, as you know, we all have very busy schedules, and they're taking that time out to chat with you. Again, avoid asking directly for a job or an internship in these experiences, because the objective of this is for you to get insight and input about what it's like to work in a certain position, a certain industry, a certain company. So you do want to keep the focus on that. If the other professional starts to bring up job search and opportunity, then yes, I would go ahead and talk about that. But again, you do want to keep the focus where it was from the origin there. So in terms of that preparation, getting a little deeper into that, locating leads. So when you are looking at who you could consider for an informational interview, start to be, again, think about who is directly around you. Are there people in your family that you never thought of conducting one of these with, that maybe somebody's doing a job that you would want to learn more about? Or, are there people that are referred by friends that you could go through? Or as I said earlier, using that LinkedIn alumni tool provides a great avenue for you to take a look at other professionals that may be in your industry, and you would have the WGU factor in common. To locate that alumni tool, all you need to do is go into LinkedIn, type in under the search bar, Western Governors University, go to the school page, and then click on the alumni tab. That's where you're going to be able to access all of this great information. So making sure, as we said earlier, researching the company, the professional in the industry. You want to try to avoid starting off this conversation knowing really nothing about the company this person works for, not knowing how long they've been in their industry, not knowing their current position, not knowing where they went to school, if applicable. So definitely have some of that preliminary research conducted. Again, creating that brief introduction, up to 3 minutes. We do have a resource on our website under Get the Job in our networking section that walks you through that introductory commercial to help you to map that out. Generate questions to ask. On our website, we also have sample informational interview questions and tips, but also start to think about what is most important for you to know. Would you like to know about the culture of that company? Would you like to know a little bit more of that person's perspective about how valuable are certifications in this field? Would you like to know a little bit more about their leadership philosophy and how they're able to implement that? Define the details of the informational interview. So if you're reaching out through email, making sure you understand, is this a virtual experience? If it is, which platform are they most comfortable using? Is it over the phone? Which honestly, I think a majority of the students with whom I speak do these over the phone, but it's whatever is comfortable with you and the other person. Some of these are even done in person. So that's where the dress professionally comes into play. I would say, even if you're doing this virtually and they can see you on camera, it is important to still have professional dress, because this is the first impression that you're giving to them. And again, you never know where this connection and this conversation can lead you. So fostering a positive mindset, especially if you get a little bit nervous about, you know, informational interviewing and you're afraid of how this is going to go, try to really encourage, that you're going to have a positive experience, that you're going to get very valuable information, show appreciation, remind yourself that this person is taking time out of their day to meet with you, and be very appreciative of that. Also, keeping the focus on them. Avoid really putting the focus on selling yourself, but more, what can this person share with me? What kind of information will I be able to glean from this person? And then it is also oftentimes a common practice, though. We talk about, not overemphasizing your credentials and selling yourself, but bringing a copy of your resume or being ready to share your LinkedIn profile if you haven't done so before can be a good practice, just in case they do want to know more about you. So then you can get um, some more, give them more perspective about yourself, if you will. So then when we are actually getting into the experience here, oh, actually, I want to take just a second. I did want to show you that alumni tool in case anyone was having challenges pulling that up. So let me just show you real quick what this looks like, because it actually is pretty amazing. So I'm on the school page and I'm clicking on this alumni tab right here. When we take a look at the first number, you can see it's a rather robust network, 231,049 alumni. You can narrow this down by industry. You can narrow this down by years. Like if you just want folks that have graduated in the last couple years, you can put those parameters in here. When I scroll down, it's going to show me where everybody works, where they live. I go to the next tab, what they do, what they're skilled at, what they studied or what they majored in, and then what level of connection they are. So for example, if I narrowed this down by IT, and then I scroll down, I can start to see individual profiles of these people. So I can start to click on, profile, see, okay, this person works at WGU, it looks like, as a service desk technician since October 2021, has an IT degree of October 2022. So this is how you can start to view the individual profiles. You can message this person and see if they would be open to an informational interview. And we'll talk about more specifics and how to craft that message in just a minute. But I did want to show you, kind of take a moment and show you how to locate that alumni tool and how to get that information. So hopefully that was helpful for you to view there for a moment. Now, this is a sample message, sample outreach message, whether it's through LinkedIn, whether it's through email, what have you. This is a way that you can craft your message and some of the elements to consider. So you'll see in the demo here, just giving my name and indicating that I'm a fellow student at WGU. Oftentimes it's a good practice to say something that you like about their background or their profile. So you'll notice on here, recently viewed the information on your LinkedIn profile. I noticed that you've been a program manager with corporate industries for the past 5 years. I'm impressed by your diverse background and varied accomplishments. I'm also looking at the next step in my career and I'm seeking some advice. Would you be willing to connect with me and share your perspective? Thank you and look forward to hearing from you. So this message is effective because it has a few different elements. It has a brief introduction. It talks about, fellow WGU student. So there is the WGU factor in common that you're reinforcing to that person. It mentions to them what you found of interest about their background. And then it's asking for advice. It's not asking for a job, as we said before, not asking for a resume review. Honestly, a lot of people like to talk about what they do. And if they do see a point of connection and they have the time, a lot of times they are willing to help others out. So these are the elements that I would include something similar like this in your initial outreach when you're trying to connect with folks. And as we said earlier, making sure you conduct that research. Research the company, research their professional background, so that you have that ready to go, and you don't, walk in blindly, what have you. And so again, this gives you a little bit, or this next slide, sorry, gives you an overview of an effective template for how you would introduce yourself to that person. So when we talked about that 30-second commercial, if you will, you might start out with giving your name, what student status you are, what degree you're completing or that you've completed. If you possess a background in another area and you're making a career pivot, you might say something like, For example, I possess a background in direct patient care and customer service. I am seeking to enter, expand my knowledge in the field of healthcare administration at this time. My top skills include, so could be where you're thinking about transferable skills. This could be where you are, if you're just expanding and growing in a field you've been in for a while, be thinking about those directly relevant skills that are connected to that industry. So you could say my top skills include leadership, project management, formulating relationships, for example. I possess certifications in PMP and Six Sigma, for example. I am excited about entering the field of blank, expanding my knowledge in blank because I would like to blank. So again, on our website, we do have some more materials to help you flesh this out, but I wanted to give you an example of the type of preparation you want to be putting into place before you conduct these informational interviews. Make sure, just a few side notes, that you confirm the length of time, the date. The time zone is very important. I've actually ran into some incidents with this before. So, making sure that you're clear on the time zone of when you're conducting this, if it's over the phone, if it's virtual. Also, the typical, I would say, length of time for these is usually about 20 to 30 minutes, but you can adjust as necessary. You just want to be mindful of the person's time. Location if it's in person, and if it's in person, again, just like with a standard job interview, it's good practice to arrive about 10 minutes early. Professional dress, again, this is mostly for if you're meeting in person. If you are doing a virtual interview, it is still a good practice to dress professionally. Be aware of things like the lighting. Usually you want the lighting to be in front of your computer or your device so that you don't get washed out. Be aware of having a quiet location, be aware of what's surrounding you. All of these elements are just kind of good reminders. So when you're actually conducting that informational interview, great practice to, of course, have a notepad ready to go so you can write down key things that stand out for you. Having a couple copies of your resume is usually a good practice as well, just in case they do ask about your background. Having your questions prepared in terms of what you want to ask. Then, here are, by the way, some sample questions for your informational interview. What are top skills and certifications needed for your discipline? What did you not expect when entering the field? Or what do you know now that you wish you would have known when you started? Are there other people you would recommend I speak with, other resources to access? Are there any great podcasts or books that you've referred to or sites that you would recommend for me to investigate? So these are just some sample questions. Again, on our website, we do have some other ones you can ask. And it's really about, again, you getting the conversation started, getting to know a little bit more about how did they become interested in this field? What has helped them really grow in this area? And how did they get to where they are, essentially, is what you're really tapping into here. Then in terms of the follow-up, what I oftentimes recommend to students is to take it, you really do want to pause for a minute after the experience, as soon after as possible, just like you would on a job interview, and write down your automatic reflections. What did you think about what this person had to say? What do you think about how they describe the company, the position, etc.? By the way, a lot of times people wonder if it's appropriate to ask about salary information. And I would say in a lot of cases, yes, but it's in the way you ask it. So typically it's a better practice to say, would you mind sharing the average salary range for a position like yours? Instead of being really direct and saying, what would a starting salary be for you? You really want to be careful how you phrase it, but a lot of times if you ask for a range and you ask it in more general terms, that can be appropriate. So taking some time to pause, write down your reflections, write down what stood out for you, and also keep in context. I've had people share before that unfortunately And this doesn't happen very often, but I have heard people share that they've had some negative experiences in terms of what that person shared. And this was more, I would say, back in my days at ASU, where people were wanting to go into the medical field, specifically pre-med. And they would talk to, I remember one student talking to a doctor and coming back and saying, yeah, the doctor told me don't waste my time, don't waste my money. You know, they're already burned out. They should go to be a physician assistant. Don't spend all your money in med school. And that really discouraged this person. So I recommend finding a few different people in your area of interest to get multiple perspectives. Writing down those impressions, writing down what stands out for you, because as you conduct more of these, of course, a lot of this can blur and it can be hard to remember who said what, if you will. Send a thank you message. It's really great if you can personalize this in some way. So as you're exiting that informational interview, making sure you have their contact information. You might even ask for a business card if it's in person so that you have that. Consider each interview a learning opportunity because again, they may ask about you and your background and it gives you a little bit of practice. When you follow up with gratitude, not demands. What we mean by this is you want to continue to build that relationship. While thanking the person for their time by email is a must, there are some articles that recommend sending a handwritten note to express gratitude right after you meet, if possible, if you know where to send it and such. It will help you be remembered because not everybody does that. And your thank you letter doesn't have to be flowery or overly effusive. Instead, it should describe how the person was helpful to you specifically, and ideally, that their guidance led to a concrete outcome in your search. So that concrete outcome could also be a part of that email. If you're able to present that, that's going to show that particular employer that you're definitely taking in their advice. You're taking in what they talked about. Maybe you tell them about a resource that you checked out that they talked about, or maybe they told you to really sit down and consider what is it about cybersecurity that is really of interest to you. How are you going to articulate that to others? Maybe you wrote out a draft and you want to share that with them. If you can put that concrete outcome in there, that's really going to showcase that you took this experience seriously and that it was very helpful. Also, avoid immediately asking for a favor. Because again, you're still building that relationship and it can be seen as an ambush in a way because you barely know the person unless you've already established a relationship before this interaction. With that said, if a couple of weeks pass by and a job opens at that company, you can reach out to that person after some time has passed. And maybe you ask them if they have any quick thoughts on professional experiences to highlight in your cover letter, for example. If that professional takes the ball and runs with it or has advice to offer you, that's excellent. But again, be careful about asking for any requests right after that experience. It's typically a good idea to let some time pass. And also from this Harvard Business Review article that I reviewed, they talk about playing the long game. What this is really referring to is the real purpose of an informational interview is to build relationships and develop future allies, supporters, and champions. So don't think of them as a one-off meeting in which someone gives you 15 minutes of their time. Take the long view and think about ways to cultivate your new professional connection. For example, you could forward them a link to a relevant article that you saw about the field that maybe you thought they'd be interested in, or invite them to, an upcoming networking event that you know, or maybe they'd be interested to see your capstone project. In other words, think of ways that you can be helpful back. You want to be seen as giving and not, like we said, mutually beneficial. You want to be seen as giving, not constantly taking. So you'd be thinking of ways that you can stay engaged and keeping them apprised of your progress. And also, if you keep them apprised of your progress, it can show that you listened to the advice that was given. So for anyone who may struggle with anxiety related to networking, there are a couple of techniques I just want to go over that may be helpful to you. One of these taps into what we call mindfulness techniques. When we really break down what mindfulness is about, it is about being fully in the present moment as much as possible. And a lot of this can have to do with turning inwards. So, whatever has worked for you in the past for other areas of stress or anxiety, maybe before you conduct an informational interview or you go to a job fair where you're going to be talking to a lot of people, maybe you do a quick 5-minute visualization, maybe something you find off of YouTube, or maybe you do your own meditation. Or, as we know, controlling breathing is a huge technique to manage anxiety. As a matter of fact, one of my colleagues shared a story recently about a student she talked to who had someone pass away to her that was very close to her, and she was devastated. She had to go to a job fair. I think it was probably less than a week later. And she talked to my colleague and said, "You know what? I'm really worried that I can't even hold it together. I am very grief stricken. I don't even know if I can hold myself together through this job fair, but I don't want to miss out on this opportunity." My colleague walked this person through a breathing exercise and reminded her that breathing is one thing you can control at any given time. So I encourage all of you to think about that. It may sound so simple, but honestly, when you're feeling, things are out of your control, there's other things happening, you're experiencing anxiety, if you're able to tap inward a little bit and take a deep breath, right? Inward, outward. You take like 3 of those deep cleansing breaths, that really can show you that you are controlling something and you're controlling something vital. That can be an excellent mindfulness technique. Or for some people, it's using their 5 senses. It could be name one thing you can see right now, name one thing you can smell, one thing you can hear. Maybe you have a coffee next to you like I do, one thing you can taste. So taking in your senses, one thing you can touch, maybe you feel your feet down on the floor. That can be another grounding mindfulness technique. So those are just overall some things to think about. Then in terms of your triggers, can you take a moment, if you tend to get wrapped up in what if thinking, take a moment and say, okay, what are the messages I'm saying to myself? What if I forget what I'm going to say? What if I look foolish in front of this person? What if I lose my train of thought? What have you? Identifying those and speaking back to them. It can be a great exercise ahead of time. Maybe you even say to yourself, so what if? So what if I lose track of my attention for a moment? Most people understand you're a human being, right? Most people understand that these things happen. It's not the be all end all. You can recover from that. So know what your triggers are when it comes to that anxious thinking. And can you talk back to that? This is also has to do with recognizing and adjusting your self-talk. So being cognizant of how you talk to and treat yourself. Imagine saying what you say to yourself to a friend you care about deeply. Would you talk to them the way that you're talking to yourself, or would you be kind and supportive? It can take 20 minutes to calm down a nervous system when it's in an anxious state. So being able to maintain that sense of calm is very important. So what are you saying to yourself before these informational interviews? Are you saying, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't have any experience, so I'm going to look foolish, what have you? Catch those and say, this taps into also what we say, having a growth mindset. I am going to learn about this field from this professional who's taking time to speak with me. I get to have this conversation, right? Little shifts like that can really help to foster enthusiasm and dampen more of that anxiety. Doing a visualization about how things will unfold. Visualize yourself being successful and having an engaging conversation where you are genuinely listening in the moment and absorbing a great deal of useful information at the same time. So setting that tone, visualization can be very powerful. I love this next one. This is from an article I came across. Be more interested than interesting. So with this, if you can ask questions and then use that as a gateway to talk about what's most meaningful and important, you'll realize the social anxiety goes down by a lot because you remove the pressure from yourself and hand it to others, right? The focus is on them at that time. You're asking them questions. So if you're worried about how you're going to appear to them, how you're going to sound, etc., if you can put more of the focus on, hey, I'm interested, I want to know more what this person has to say. Now, that's not to discount your first impression of you to them, but it is to put more of the focus on them. Create prompts for what you would like to discuss or share. Again, that's where those key questions coming into prepare is very important, so that you have a little bit of a script. And also, you could have just general conversation prompts. You might ask them, have you, listened to any great podcasts lately? What has your team been working on? What are you looking forward to in the next week or month? What projects have you been working on, or have you read any interesting articles? So all of these could be great conversation prompts. Choose an anchor. Some people will have jewelry that they'll wear that helps them to bring back the present moment. If there's something like that, or maybe it's a special pen you bring or what have you, that you have next to you, or if it's a phone appointment, maybe it's a picture you can look at that keeps you calm. These can all be great techniques to help to anchor you and ease that anxiety. Write down a single specific intention. So if you were to pick one thing you would want from this informational interview experience, is it, I want to hear what this person's experience has been as a leader, or I want to know how this person describes this company's culture. A lot of times, if you can really pinpoint and hone in on a single specific intention, that can help you to focus and kind of ease anxiety as well. Start small. I've talked to some people that have admittedly told me they have severe social anxiety. And we have started really small and said, okay, how about in the next 2 weeks, you investigate the alumni tool, find a list of 5 people that you might be able to talk to. We'll touch base again. Then we'll talk about what questions you might want to ask one person, just for a 15-minute conversation. So starting small and building up confidence can be a really great technique. Focus on help provided to others and or how the connection will help your future career. So again, rather than that, oh, I'm not a good networker, I don't feel confident, take a look at how this is going to help you. Think about how this person may have connections to other people that, could also help you in your search. Or think about what kind of valuable narrative you're going to be able to obtain from this conversation. Start with a 10-minute rule. If your anxiety gets really extreme, say, okay, I'm going to have a really quick conversation. I'm going to start with 10 minutes. I'm going to ask them 4 questions. See how that goes. And you may even want to have an exit strategy. Again, this might be, at the moment, it might be a little embarrassing for you. It doesn't have to be, but if you're really feeling anxiety, just having a plan of, okay, you can tell that person, I'm so sorry, something happened, I'm not feeling well, I have to go. That happens. And for some, just having some kind of an exit strategy in their pocket can help ease anxiety as well. And again, after each interview, write down what went well. If you struggle with that networking, think about, hey, I did a great job of introducing myself. Or, you know what, I did a good job of keeping that conversation going, even though I was feeling anxious and hesitant. That can also help to increase your confidence and hopefully help you to be more comfortable if this is something you struggle with. And I like to, as we get toward the closing, I like to do a little bit of a, I almost call it a cheerleader exercise for people. But this can also help you when you're trying to build up, again, if networking isn't your favorite thing, this can help you to give some more confidence to the forefront. So the idea behind this is to tap into some of your skills that you have, some of those areas that you're good at. They might be employment related, they might not be. Something that you're most proud of, listing 3 of your top values, and then also thinking about your dream jobs. So this is meant to cultivate confidence and enthusiasm. I encourage you to think about this. So list 5 of your top skills. For example, you might know this, or you might have been told that you are a really good connector. You're able to get people conversing and connecting really well. Or maybe you are a good multitasker. You're a good program or project manager. Maybe you are really strong at problem solving. So listing your top skills, listing 3 things others have told you you're good at. Maybe they say, you know what, you are really empathetic. You're the person people come to when they really want to, process some things. Or maybe you're the real analytical thinker. Say, hey, I come to you when I really need to talk something through and see how the pieces come together. List one thing you're most proud of from the last year. Maybe you received a success award from WGU for something you worked on. Or maybe it was a project you completed and you received really great feedback from someone. List 3 of your top values. These could, be employment related or not. We do find that if you are working in alignment with your career or with your overall goals and they align with your career, that you tend to be more successful. So maybe it's making a difference. Maybe it is, being a strong leader. Maybe that's important to you. Maybe work-life balance is important. So noting those. And then 3 dream jobs. Maybe you want to be a CEO of a hospital network. Maybe you want to be a cybersecurity officer. Maybe you want to be a principal. Doesn't have to be at the top of the chain, but what are your 3 dream jobs? So I encourage you to think about these as you go into this experience, because again, these kinds of questions can help to build confidence and momentum direction. So your next steps. What I oftentimes find is it's very easy to attend one of these workshops, say, hey, that was great. Give me some things to think about, but then we kind of put it to the wayside, right? So what I encourage you to do is in the next 30 days, write down 3 next steps you're going to take related to informational interviewing. Maybe you're going to do that yeah exercise we just showed you. Maybe you're going to use the alumni tool and find 5 people to reach out to. Maybe you're going to practice your 30-second commercial. Whatever it is, 30 days approximately from now is going to be May 26th. I encourage you to write that down. Put a little reminder in your calendar somewhere that you can follow up, touch base. Maybe you even find an accountability buddy that can check in with you and see if you followed up with those strategies. Then just a quick overview of what we do in CPD. So we do offer appointments on different topics like deciding what you want to do with your degree, to what resources to use to find an internship, full-time opportunity, to interview help, interview strategy, mock practice interviews, salary negotiation, a little bit about networking, utilizing Handshake to find opportunities. These are all under the umbrella of what we cover. We currently do all resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn profile reviews by email so that we can provide customized, detailed feedback to you. More about that is on our website. You can see there's a little bit of a resume review process that involves watching a tutorial, filling out a self-review form, then sending a copy of your resume and the self-review form to us so we can review everything. We do also have callback service. So if you have a more immediate need, sometimes our appointments book out. If you have a more immediate need, you can call us and leave a voicemail during our regular business hours, and we will return your call within 24 business hours. So sometimes you have an interview spring up and you need help right away. That's what that's there for, or other quick questions we can help with. So remember all of the things that you have to offer when it comes to an informational interview as well, because there's a lot of experience that all of you have. We all come from different backgrounds. Even if you're making a career pivot, you have a lot that you can offer folks. And again, you will get a copy of the recording sent. I know that we are just about at time, but if you have any quick questions here at the end, please feel free to type them in the chat. If you need to go, we definitely understand that. Someone had a question, do you run resumes through applicant tracking systems? Since every company is different and uses a different ATS, we don't personally do that, but we are all cross-trained on items to look for that are standard across applicant tracking systems. So when you go through the tutorial that we require you to watch, it does talk about that, and we will make sure that the formatting is receptive to ATS. It's a good question. Thank you all for attending, and I hope that this was helpful. to setting up those informational interviews. And I hope that you're open to taking the chance to do a few if you haven't before, because again, I've seen it be so valuable to my own process. And I've also known a lot of folks that have had success. And that statistic, again, 1 in 12 lands in a job opportunity. So it's good to know. So I'm not conducting the resume lab, but there is the tutorial you can watch, and then there's resume workshops that are offered through Handshake. Some of my colleagues are conducting different ones. I do have one coming up in May sometime, but you have either the choice of watching that tutorial 24/7, or you can tune into our resume live lab, whatever works best for you. Oh, Anthony, good luck. Yes, sounds great. And again, thank you all for attending today. And I hope this was helpful. And like I said, I will send you out that recording within 2 business days, so you'll have time to review everything. If I can be of any further assistance, feel free to schedule an appointment. I'd love to chat with you more about where you're at in your strategy as well. Eunice, thank you for attending. All right. Thank you all. I don't see any further questions. So have a great rest of your day and take care. Be safe.